Are you ready to do this?
I am. Let's do it.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to our DIY live stream, How to Paint a Deck workshop. Man, I'm excited that you're here, but before we dive too deep, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Leland Sproul. I'm here with
Joe Cobb.
and we are so excited to bring this content to you. Let's start talking to you about the deck and how to paint that. We got a lot to go over today, folks. First, we're going to talk to you about prepping a deck. Now,
Big piece.
a wise man once told me 5 steps to do the deck. Prep, paint, maintain. And those last two, they can be prepped.
There's a lot of prep on those too.
There is a lot of prep. It's super important. We're obviously going to go over some of the tools for your project, what works, what doesn't, maybe our preferences. And then we're just going to break down the types of paint and then how to actually get that on your deck. And last but not least, we'll talk about maintaining it because this is, well, it's kind of a lot of work.
It is. But it's a very cool DIY project.
It is. But once it's on there, you don't have to do it again every single week, month, or year. So we want you to be able to maintain that surface, and we'll talk about that as well. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's talk about all that deck prep, Joe.
Yeah, so first off, the most important thing you want to do with your deck is you need to inspect it. Now, there's a lot of different things you need to look at when you're looking at your deck. Now, depending on the age of your deck, that's really going to dictate how much time you spend on something. So look for loose boards. Loose boards typically do happen over time, especially if your deck has been put together with nails. Now, there's decking screws that are used these days, but if it's 8, 10 years old, you probably have nails. Those nails come loose and the boards actually come loose.
If you're getting a new deck, should you tell your contractor to use nails or screws?
I recommend using the deck screws. They do last longer and they don't create a large hole where actually moisture gets in and exposes the wood to rot, which is our next thing to look at. You want to make sure that you check for rotted areas. Now, here's actually a board, part of the deck that we actually cleaned, just to show you how the cleaning process works. But I want you to look, as you go through this board, you see areas like this. You've got maybe little cracks in the wood. Now, that's normal, right? What you want to do is maybe take a screwdriver or something right there and just kind of put into those little cracks, right? Kind of wiggle it back and forth, see if anything comes out. Now, rotted areas, it doesn't mean that your whole deck's rotted, but it does mean that that board particularly probably needs to be pulled up and replaced, which you can do. It's not hard to do. The other thing you want to look for is moisture traps, okay? So maybe, now Leland, I know you love the grill, right? You know, so a lot of times the grill, it's sitting on your deck, doesn't get a lot of light underneath. It collects moisture, it builds up. You wind up maybe have some moldy areas. So look for those areas where moisture gets trapped and it doesn't drain off, okay? And then look for mold and mildew. All the stuff will need to be removed before you can actually paint your deck. It's very, very important. I can't tell you how many times we've had people say, hey, I put this great paint on and now it's bubbling up. What was the problem? Probably because it was put over something that had a lot of moisture to it, or mold or mildew.
It was either prep, or prep.
Yes.
So how do you get that stuff off?
Well, there's a lot of different things you can do. First off, there's scraping the deck. Now, you can do this a lot of different ways. You can use a multi-tool, just like you see right there. I will tell you, it does take a little bit of effort. You always want to make sure you're using, some gloves and some safety glasses when you're doing this, as well as a mask. Always make sure you have those safety precautions there. But scraping would take off a lot of the older paint or latex or stain, whatever you have on there. Now, I will tell you, as you're scraping, if you come across little areas like knots in the wood, it's going to be hard to do that. So we'll talk about how to get that off in just a moment. And everything else, we'll just, again, you can kind of see how that's, just really coming up very lightly as I'm doing that. Does take a lot of effort, but it is totally worth it in the long run.
Now, I like to do bigger areas at the time, right? You do. I mean, if I can do it smarter, I'm going to not do it harder. And so one of the things I love to do is those deck brushes.
Yes, they're great.
Get some of the cleaner on there. I don't have to bend over. I got some back stuff. I got some knee stuff.
Sure.
You know that. So one of those deck brushes, we joke about this all the time. What's the best chemical you can put on your deck?
Yes, I do.
You put one of those cleaners down. We've got this great Bear all-in-one wood cleaner.
Yeah.
We're going to show you this in action just a little bit. By the way, read the label. You can use this to maintain your deck, which is fantastic, or you can use it to get all of this stuff off, which again is what you want. You want this board ready to go when you're about to paint that there. So apply that cleaner and start to scrub. You're going to want a very stiff bristled brush. In fact, you're actually trying to scratch some of this stuff off your wood.
Really, yeah.
And by the way, it's okay to rough up your wood just a little bit. Yeah, we don't want it perfectly smooth. If it's perfectly smooth, it doesn't hang on to paint.
No.
So scratching and really scrubbing this stuff off is one of your best ways to do that. You're also going to cover a little bit more area. So I will tell you, scraping is a good place to start or finish what you can't get off in some of those really tough to get places. But once you've scraped, once you've done the brush, you're still not done. That wood still needs a little bit more prep. And that's where you come to sanding. How do you sand? What's the best way to do it?
So I give it those big floor sanders. Just go to town. Leo, you've actually got something right behind you there. It's an orbital sander. This is what we really recommend when you're sanding wood. It is tiny. And like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into this. When you sand wood, if you get one of those large sanders, what happens is, number one, it's going to actually polish the wood. So like you were talking about, if you sand the wood to a very fine finish, you actually close up the pores. And guess what happens? The paint will not bind to the wood. It'll actually bubble up. It'll bubble up. So when you're sanding, you're going to use low grit. This is actually 80 grit sandpaper. You can see that right on the back. This extra on there fits really easy.
Yeah, by the way, this comes off super easy.
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah. Pull it off.
We just replace the pad.
Put a new one on. Yeah. So you can buy a whole, sleeve of these for just a couple of bucks. So
You're probably going to need, you're going to go through some.
you're going to go through these. So you're going to actually sand that wood with a low grade or a low grip sandpaper. That's going to take a lot more stuff off, and it's not going to prepare the wood to actually bond to the paint.
Now, there's a little dust collector here, but I don't think you collect all the dust off the entire deck. Yeah. So you might need to vacuum it off, maybe brush stuff, get all that stuff off the deck. You don't want to be staining debris and painting debris onto your deck.
Because guess what? It'll stick to that debris, and that's where it will bubble up. So you will hear a lot of people say, what happened here? I did everything you told me. Typically, when you have paint bubbling up or stain not applying, it's because the wood wasn't prepared properly and there's moisture buildup underneath it.
And that's that. So moisture, do I not put water on this, or can I pressure wash it?
Oh, you can absolutely pressure wash it. Should I? Well, I know we're both lazy. So yes, pressure washing actually does a great job. You're going to see this in action in just a few moments. So we talk about, cleaning, scraping, sanding, pressure washing. Now, with a pressure washer, they come in different PSI. And Leila, you told me this, right? About 15 to 1800 is about the maximum PSI you want for a deck. Anything higher than that, not only will it damage the wood, it'll actually damage it to the point where it can't be fixed. It actually gouges it out. So you don't want to go super high with this pressure washer.
Read the label, and that's now more present in pressure washers. And going back to some of those chemicals, right?
Yeah.
Every single chemical has a different efficacy. Every single chemical has a different job. You might be trying to wash mildew off, but if your deck doesn't have a lot of mildew, you can go with a little bit of a less abrasive cleaner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, if you read the label on this all-in-one wood cleaner, it'll literally tell you if you have heavy stains in older wood, you use a higher mixture of this with water.
Yep.
And if your deck's relatively new, but you still have a few stains on it, things like that, even grease stains, you just kind of dilute it a little bit more. So again, follow these directions. And this right here was great. I have a 10 by 12 deck. You've been on my deck before. I use this one bottle to clean my entire deck. My deck is about 8 years old.
Let me ask you this. You just said something that kind of got me thinking. A new deck. Do I have to clean new decks? Do I have to prep them? I mean, it's new. It should be good to go.
So there's a couple of things when we were talking about new decks. And actually, I've got here we go. So a new deck, it's going to kind of look something like this. First off, if you're going to do anything to a new deck, give it the water test. See, this is pressure treated lumber, and it actually has a chemical that's been pushed into it, right, to kind of keep it from. So there you go. So look at this water right now. I think you can kind of see this. I'm going to wash this, folks. I'm going to turn this. And you see that water just kind of drip right off. So this wood is not ready to be stained or painted. The water, because what's going to happen? It's the same thing this water does. It's just going to bead up and it's going to sit on it. So you want to make sure if the water, you just drip some water on it. If it absorbs into the wood over time, see if I can kind of get the rub in right there.
It's spreading out, but
Right. So you can see it's not even absorbing into that. So this wood is not ready to be stained. If the water absorbs into the wood, then it's ready to be stained and or painted.
cool. So we've got all of this shown in action for you in a little video that we actually did on your deck, and it shows you kind of all the different processes in place. Check it out, and we'll come back in just a few minutes. All right, folks, so let's get this deck ready for all this stain. Dude, you're blowing it off.
Yeah, well, you got to get rid of all the debris, leaves, twigs, just, surface dirt. No, that's not going to keep it completely clean.
So you have a cleaner?
Yeah, this is the Bear All Wood Purpose Cleaner. It's great for older wood, as this deck is about 10 years old.
Is the paint and dirt and all that kind of stuff on it 10 years old too?
Well, the paint's about 7 years old, but we want to get rid of that as well. So you can see I'm using the scrub brush, and that's going to dislodge a lot of the mold, the mildew, and some of that dirt that's ground into the wood.
Okay, so it cleans a little bit beneath the surface.
It does, absolutely, and that's what you want. You don't want to score the wood by using a scouring pad or anything, but this really gets a lot of that surface dirt off of the wood.
Does clean wood accept stain or paint better?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And so the next thing I'm going to do is, you can see this wood's pretty old, so I'm going to hit it with a pressure washer. Now, pressure washers can go upwards of 3,000 PSI.
That seems extreme.
Well, it is, and you don't want to use that amount of pressure on wood. You can actually score or gouge the wood. You can see some of the paints coming up right here already. I've got this dialed down. This is about 1,500 PSI, and the nozzle is on the 40-degree range. It actually has a recommendation of that.
So wider with a little bit less pressure,
yes,
gradually take this stuff off.
Absolutely. Okay, so a lot of that paint's coming off. You can see how clean the wood is getting already with just the pressure washer there.
It's a completely different color.
It really is. Now, we're not quite done. So after pressure washing, you're still going to have some maybe old paint that's stuck there or old stain.
So how do we step up the cleaning?
Well, the last thing we're going to have to do is we're going to actually have to sand. Now, safety first, right? Safety. Yeah, safety. I got my gloves, I got my goggles on, got my mask on, and I'm using an orbital sander here. And the grit of sandpaper is very, very important. I'm using between a 60 to 80 grit sandpaper. I want it pretty rough.
But you told me not to score or gouge this wood, so why is it rough?
So it's rough to get that paint off. Now, if you go too high of a grade of sandpaper, you're going to make that wood really, really smooth, believe it or not, the higher grit, and that's going to cause the pores to close up, and then the paint or stain won't stick.
So rough helps get stuff off and let the stain and paint stick.
Absolutely.
That looks like a clean deck, ready to go for paint or stain.
I think so.
So there you go. That's in action. Your deck's looking really good, man.
It does. It does. And in fact, this is a great example of what that cleaning can do for you. So here is this piece of wood, right? It was a loose board I took up. You can see right here where we just did the scrub, right? And then this is actually where we actually pressure washed. And then I sanded right here. So you can kind of see a little bit of coloration there. This is where we didn't touch anything, right? And that's the stuff you've got to get that up before you can actually take care of your board. So you can see, look at this side. Here's a great example of where, right here, sanded. This is sanded, pressure washed, and cleaned. So that wood looks almost brand new, and it's probably about 9 years old and been exposed to the elements.
Ready to go. So 9 years old, how long do these things last? I mean, we talked about having to do these every so often. If you get a good deck and you take care of it, how long will that last?
Wood is an organic product, so it's going to decay, and it's going to be out in the sun and the rain and the snow. It takes a beating. So if you don't put anything on it and don't protect it, it's going to last for about 7-8 years, right? If you do paint it well and you maintain it properly, you can get this to last 15, possibly 20 years. Now, that's kind of like the max amount of time. I will tell you, though, in that amount of time, you're going to have to replace some boards, right? Boards just are going to rot. You're going to miss one little spot. You're going to miss the spot just on the edge. One of those screws will come loose. But yeah, properly maintained, you can have it last 15, 20 years, which, if you think about it, in the life of owning a home, that's a pretty long time.
Better than a lot of products that you
Absolutely, yes.
All right, so we talked about the scrubbers. We've talked about scraping. We've talked about sanding and cleaning. Are we done with the tools, or should we talk about stuff like how to get this stuff on?
Well, yeah, so now your deck's clean. So you spent all this time prepping. in a big piece, you'll hear us talk about this. If you did all this prep and you clean that deck and then it rains, you got to start over.
Ouch.
Because that moisture is going to build up. The chemicals, even in rainwater, is going to cause problems. So you got to find a couple days where it's going to be extremely sunny or just not really hot, not really cold. Now, how do you put this on? A lot of different products you can use. I'm going to show you some samples of paint in just a second, but let me show you these different types of brushes you can use. First off, there is the traditional, just kind of like a roll-on brush right here. Leo, I know you said you had bad knees and everything. These are great. Have a little extender, right?
Especially for short people or tall.
Yeah, I've heard it's great. You know, just kind of, it's totally worth it. Very easy to use and a tab.
Is that special for decks or is it the same kind I can use on the inside of my house?
You can use this on the inside of your house. I just recommend, instead of being on your knees all the time, it's great to use. Now, I will tell you, part of the problem though is when people use brushes like this, they get it really goopy wet with paint, and then they take it on that deck and they just go splat and then start rolling. Well, guess what? That's way too much paint right there. And so that paint's not going to adhere. So you want to do it very light. And
Little dog to flare down on.
you don't have to bear down on it at all. Very light. Now,
How do I get all those cracks if I'm not pressing down as hard as I can?
so if you're going to use a roller, I recommend getting something with a very thick nap. That's that fur around it. So you can kind of see right here in this deck, see how it gets into all those little
Oh, that makes sense.
crevices. Now, that's not going to get everywhere in there, but it's a great way to spread it out. Also, this, especially when you're using paint, it rolls very easily. It doesn't get stuck and smear the paint. So
I'm not working as hard.
exactly. Another thing that you might want to use is, get you a good heavy-duty brush. I like using these Worcester brushes, especially that have the angle on them, because another way to get in between those crevices like that. Now, when you're brushing paint on, whether it's use a roller or a brusher, it's going to give the paint a certified texture to it. We'll show that in just a second. Other things you can use a very, very thin nap roller like this. Again, these tend to roll very well. And depending on your style of paint, I know you're going to go over this in a few moments, can give you another type of texture. Finally, we get questions about all this all the time.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of labor. Can I just
Use a paint sprayer. So yeah, there's a lot of different things about paint sprayers. There's high volume. There's airless. There's pneumatic. I'll tell you this: when it comes to a paint sprayer, if you're not accustomed to using one of these, you're gonna have to spend even more time prepping before you use it. Yeah, you want to put up a drop cloth on the walls of your house outside, because when you're using a paint sprayer, even though it doesn't look like you're spraying anywhere, that overspray is going to drift. That's going to stick to the walls of your house.
Oh,
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen that happen a lot. So paint sprayers, yes, but the time you're going to spend using one of these in prep sometimes makes it maybe not worth it.
sorry to be the bearer of bad news, right? Yeah, but like I said, if you see a pro using that, it's because they're used to that kind of stuff. They're protecting from arterial spray.
Yes.
They're rid of the other spray, the off spray that hits on that house.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So now we've talked about all the different types of tools. Let's talk about the different types of paint, because I don't know about you, but when I walk into the paint aisle, it's a little overwhelming. There's so many different things to choose from.
So there are lots of different paints, lots of different colors, but what we're going to focus on primarily here is what's called the paint finish. Okay. So now, first off, I want to point to each one of these. This first one that I have right here, okay? This is basically a matte finish, okay? It means it doesn't have a lot of sheen to it. Now, this particular paint right here was actually applied with a sprayer. So you can look and see at the very even coat that I've got there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can actually still see the wood grain in that wood. And that does a really good job of protecting your wood.
Mhm.
Next to this is a semi-gloss finish.
Okay, so a little bit more shiny.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is your semi-gloss. This is satin right here.
Oh.
So just a little bit more of a sheen to it. This was applied using a foam roller, so you can kind of see a little bit of the brush strokes in that. Then we go to a semi-gloss here, applied with a brush. So you can actually see those brush strokes.
So it's important to paint in the direction of the strokes that you want to see.
Exactly.
All right.
And then finally, when I was talking about using some of these special applicators right here, this is a high gloss finish, and look at the texture that leaves. Now, it's pretty cool. Now, Leland, now you can see all the difference right there. As I'm holding these up to the camera, what do you notice? What happens as you progress from your side to my side with this paint?
It gets a little shinier.
Yes.
It gets a little bit more protected. I feel like this one is just going to resist all that beating, whereas this one, it looks nice, but it's just for pretty.
That's pretty much it. Paint is kind of like a cover around the wood. It binds to the wood, but doesn't really absorb into the wood. So let me show you this. This is a great little example. People talk about are paint and stain interchangeable. No, this is actually stained wood right here. All right. So you can kind of see that grain. These go, basically just how transparent to semi-solid here, but these actually absorb into the wood. So if you're going to paint, it's going to protect the wood more.
Now I see black gray stain here. What about black paint? I mean, really dark, got to protect my wood. Is that okay?
So a semi-solid, whether it's paint or a stain, is going to protect the wood more. However, in the South, we recommend, especially if your deck gets a lot of sunlight, don't paint the deck black or dark browns because it's going to reflect a lot of heat, and that's not fun.
It's kind of like stepping on a fresh black top.
Exactly. Slid down your bare feet egg on it.
That's not fun. Now, those are the different types of colors. Those are the different types of sheen that you're going to do it. But you also have one more decision to make when it comes to paint. That's the formula or what type of paint there is. The biggest decision, are you going to go with water-based paint or are you going to go with oil-based paint? It's a little bit different because we're not painting the inside of your house here. Right. So water-based paints, well, they sound and act a lot like water. They go into the wood. They're absorbed very, very easily. They're also kind of thin. It's very easy to use. So you don't have a lot of work or smearing or those types of things happen. And almost every type of brush can do it. It's also super.
So if you're going to use a sprayer, go with a water base.
We're talking about aerolizing something into a liquid and aerosolized format. So if it's thinner and easier to apply,
yes,
it goes through a sprayer much easier.
Yeah.
Oil-based, well, it's kind of the opposite of everything we just talked about, right? You don't want to put one of these in the sprayer. They are a little bit thicker. They're designed to penetrate, to hold on to that wood, but they're also going to sit on top of it just a little bit more. It's going to be a thicker coat. It's also going to be a little bit more protected.
Yes.
It's a little harder to go on.
Yes.
It's a little, I'll step it up and say a lot harder to clean up.
Yes.
And it's less forgiving if you make a mistake.
Yes.
But man, is it a product that's going to last for a very, very long time. Now, with interior paint, we get the question a lot, can I put oil over water or water over oil? You can't put water over oil. You can put oil over water. But we've been talking all about not painting over something, getting it all off, scraping it, making sure your deck is just wood that's ready to go and to be painted. So while those can happen, and you'll read that on the label, we recommend just getting it all off. Then, like I said, we talked about some of that texture that oil does. So a little bit more work, a little less forgiving, but man, we love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we've made the decision of paint. It took us forever. We had our science lesson.
Now let's actually get it onto the deck. Where in the world do I start?
So what you want to start with are going to be the balusters, the railings first, because it's a lot easier to clean up any drip spots afterwards.
Okay. Oh, sure. I'm about to clean this up anyway or paint over it, so that might be a little bit more forgiving.
Yes. Yeah. So you want to make sure. So if you are using a brush, everything, stir the paint very, very well before you start using it. This is something else I want to make sure everybody knows. When you are painting this, and we talked about the weather, same thing. As you're painting on that deck, as Leland pointed out, if you're using a brush, go along with the grain of the wood, right? Don't do a section here, and then move a section here, and then a section here, and then a section here. Try to go all the way down one board and all the way up with another one. It's good. Paint's going to dry at difference. And the wood, as you can see, this little, deck we have here, wood grains are a little bit different.
Sure.
And so it's not going to be a same uniform color. Now, the darker and thicker paint, oil-based paint, yeah, it's going to go on a lot more uniform. You're not going to really see the wood grain and everything. But It's very important. Don't leave big splotches of it as well. You want to smooth all of that out.
Now you talked about the railings and the banisters and the balusters and those things. That thinks, okay, vertical stuff. Can I do everything we've been talking about on a fence?
Absolutely. In fact, we want to rail the fence as well. This is a cedar for a fence right here. Two pieces of this I want to show you. First off, this was cleaned with the all-in-wood cleaner. We also pressure washed it and we sanded just a little bit. All right. So what did this side over here was not clean? What did this look like prior? Guess what? Had paint. This is paint. This is paint right here. Now, cedar is a great type of wood. It resists rot. So that's another great thing. Make it out of fences and decks. A little bit more expensive. But you can see this paint right here. This paint kind of peels off, right? That's how paint attaches to wood, right? It bonds to it, but it acts like a protector. So now, underneath this paint, that wood's in really, really good shape. That's why I like painting more so than staining. Painting, if it's done right, you pretty much only have to do it every couple of years.
I like working less. Yes, I like protecting things a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that's the vertical stuff. And you talked about a few of the tips for the deck, right? Rolling it on there, painting it and thing, not doing so many, just one section at a time.
Yes.
You're real blotchy. Trying to do as much of it as can, but there's got to be other stuff, right? How do I,
Well, so a couple
mess up?
Okay, so a couple of things where this is you hear me say this all the time. Joe's pitfalls. People make a lot of mistakes when they're doing the deck. Okay, you do not need to paint underneath the deck. Okay, that is not necessary. However, the edges of the boards, yes, paint them.
I mean, it's not. It might end up looking something like it's a little bit of TV magic, but on the edge of these boards, you can see a little bit of that wood showing.
Yes.
So it's not good just look like that.
Well, and also it's going to help protect it because guess what? Where most of the moisture the wood is going to absorb. It may sit on this, right? And for whatever reason, another pitfall, a lot of people try to enclose the bottom of a deck. Don't do that. That traps moisture underneath.
Yeah.
Don't do that. There's a reason why there are gaps in these boards so the moisture can get through. So if you've done a great job of prepping and painting, but you leave these ends exposed, moisture will be absorbed into there and it causes the boards to warp or pop. So make the edges of the boards as well. Last thing about painting, whether you're using a roller, a sprayer, or a brush, very important. Don't put a lot of paint in one area. I have seen people pour paint on a deck and then pull it back. Please don't do that because guess what? In a year's time, that's exactly where it's going to start to mold. Right. It doesn't need a lot of paint. That's the big misconception. You don't need a lot of paint on a deck. It's going to actually bond to the wood. If you've got, grooves or anything like that, again, well, it's good to have one of these brushes kind of get in between those, or I always use a little bit of both.
And then where do you start? Do you start in center? Do you start left? Do you start right? Do you get back into the house? How do you do?
So you want to make sure that you do not paint yourself into a corner, which I've seen
Literally or metaphorically?
Yes. So make sure that you end at the stairs, going down the stairs, or make sure you end at the door going into your house. I like ending at my stairs because then I can take all my paintbrushes and everything down the stairs and clean them up and then do the stairs one at a time afterwards.
You don't like to drip paint and stain throughout the kitchen and the carpet and with the dogs and stuff?
I let's just say I've learned not to do that.
Joe's pitfall number 8,326. Like, that's how you get all that paint on the deck. That's how it's protected. But again, we're doing this to look good and protect it. So you got to maintain this thing once it's done. The biggest thing you can do is just clean it. Right? Sweep it off every once in a while. Yeah, fall happens. You get some leaves, you get sticks. We've got spills and all those different types of things. Just get a broom, sweep that stuff off. You wouldn't think that a leaf sitting there on that deck for weeks or months would scratch your surface, but you step on it. You grind it down. It builds up, right? It starts to stain the surface a little bit. Maybe moisture gets trapped there. Speaking of moisture, do you have rugs? Do you have grill mats? I've got one of those those cushion storage things. Get that stuff off when you're cleaning it every once in a while. Sweeping underneath it, blowing off the debris, and just keeping it not covered and scratched with stuff that would mess up that surface. And then every once in a while, about once a year, go ahead and scrub it.
Yeah,
Get that cleaner. The same cleaner we were using to get the stuff off, again, you dilute it a little bit. Read the label. It just helps clean that paint surface, right?
yeah. And if you notice you've got paint bubbling after a year, well, then it's time to take everything off and just redo the process.
So wait, if I've got some bubbling here, but not over here, can I just do this one and not over here?
Well, so what's going to happen is if you ever ripped a jacket or a shirt,
I've never done that.
never ever. So if that's ever happened to you, you can't just put a new piece of fabric right there on it and expect it to stay, because those seams are, yeah, you're going to really want to strip it down and start over. You've got just one little spot you want to touch up, and you don't want to do this all over again. Yeah, you can touch up with it, but just know where one spot starts to bubble, other spots will kind of start as well.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Exactly.
Excellent. All right, so that's painting a deck, folks. We went over a ton. Remember all the prep. We cannot stress this enough. Making sure your wood is ready to accept that paint is paramount. Otherwise, it's wasted time and money. I know what likes to see funny. We talked about the different tools. Get the right stuff. This is okay to spend a little bit extra money on your tools.
Is that right? Yes.
Over the course of time, it's going to make your job go easier. It's going to make it look better. And sometimes you can reuse them. Yeah, save you for the next time you got to do it. So get the right tools and what makes the most sense in your hands. And then choose the right paint for what you're going to do. We talked about the water. We talked about the oil. We talked about how to apply it. And of course, maintain it. Once it's on, keep it looking as nice as you can for it as long as you can to keep that deck ready to go. So, folks, remember, there's a quick little survey at the end of this workshop. If you liked it, let us know. Make sure you put in, Leon and Joe were amazing. They should run the company. Whatever it is that you want to say, we would never put words in your mouth. But also, if there's workshops that you don't see that you want, let us know. We read them, and we make workshops based on what your responses are. Like, this actually came up because you asked for it, like I said. Also, go check out the other workshops. We've got the Homeowner 101s that are basics. We've got DIYs like this. We even have some where we show you step by step, get our hands really dirty, how to do that. So come check those out. We would love to see it. And one really, really important thing, most important thing, thank you. You could have been doing anything else today, but you came to hang out with us. We were going to be here regardless, but without you, there is no us. So thank you so much for being here. And man, we can't wait to see you at the next workshop. Y'all have a good one.